We're looking at a theme which has been called Head, Heart and Guts, Total Transformation. We've been looking at the Buddhist path in terms of the total transformation of our being, our mind, our emotions and our volitions, our guts, our energy. So we've been looking at transforming our head, transforming our views and our thoughts into the wisdom of the enlightened mind. And we've been looking at transforming our emotions into the enlightened emotions of compassion, metta, gratitude, reverence. And we've been looking at the transformation of our coarser and blocked energies into the enlightened energy of the enlightened mind, an energy directed towards awakening. We've also been looking at this in terms of three archetypal bodhisattva figures called the three protector figures. So we've looked firstly at Manjughosha, who embodies the enlightened wisdom. And we've looked at Avalokiteshvara, who embodies the enlightened emotions, you could say compassion. And we've been looking at Vajrapani more recently, who embodies the energy of the enlightened mind. So we've been thinking a lot and hearing a lot about these things. But next week we're going to have a ritual, a puja, dedicated to this theme, which will be much more about our emotions, transforming our emotions and our depths. So come to the ritual next week, that'll be next Tuesday, to round off the theme. But this evening we'll be hearing from three Sangha members. And these are always evenings that I really enjoy, but hearing more personally from three separate Sangha members about their own practice in these areas, their own experience in these areas, transforming their head, their heart and their guts. So first of all, Pretti is going to talk to us about transforming her views and thoughts, and then we'll hear from Amoghavamsa, who's going to talk to us about transforming the heart and emotion, and then I'll be talking to you again about transforming my guts. My volitions and my energy. And Ariadasa is going to wave at us a big feather, and it's time to stop. Well, after 12 minutes and then again at 15, aren't you? Yeah. So firstly, Pretti, you're going to talk to us.
Hello. You're all very lovely and beautiful, very good. So it was really helpful coming to Sangha Night last week, because Satchio gave a great talk which included how to overcome fear of public speaking. What a winner, very good. And she made a great point in that talk, which was that it's really important to remember that when you're giving a talk, it's not about you. But it's quite tricky to bear in mind when you're about to give a personal talk about the workings of your inner mind. So I'll do my best. So as Bodhinaga said, I'm going to be talking about the head aspect. Particularly about wrong views. So when I first started thinking about this talk, I thought, well, that seems like the way in here is, one of the fundamental things we're trying to do is identify our wrong views, which can be really tricky, and then try and transform them into right views. And I'm just going to do a quote here from one of my favourite papers written by Subhuti, and if you haven't come across this yet, I'd really recommend reading it. The paper's called Revering and Relying Upon the Dharma. He says about wrong views, they appear to serve our best interests, but often, in fact, they only bring us future suffering. And I've really found this to be true. So the first example I'd like to talk about is forgiveness. So I had a complete wrong view of forgiveness and didn't realise for years. And I feel like on reflection it's probably stemmed from my teenage years. And times where, in situations, for example, in friendships where I felt betrayed, I'd really push away. I don't think I really understood the concept of forgiveness, actually. I would kind of build a wall and just push back. And I can see that's a protective mechanism, so that kind of appeared to serve my best interest because it was to try and protect myself. But absolutely it would bring me future suffering, and I can really identify that. A huge issue with this sort of way of dealing with things is people are imperfect and mistakes are going to happen, and that's okay. And if you continue to wall off from these things instead of looking to forgive, you're just going to become more and more isolated and more in pain yourself as well. So my revelation with this came about 3 years ago, and it was very much by talking to a friend about a situation, actually. And I think that's a really important thing with wrong views, is you often need friendship to reflect things back and to really understand things, because when they're so deep rooted in your mind, it's really hard to see it yourself. And just the point that actually, when you forgive someone, you're not condoning their unethical behaviour or their unskillfulness. You're not saying that that particular action was okay, really. You're forgiving the fact that, mistakes happen, people are imperfect. And actually, forgiveness is as much for yourself as it is for the other person, and that's really important. You're freeing your own heart and mind, actually, from awful mental states. And it's not always straightforward. There are times, I feel like I've made huge steps with it, but there's still times where I feel like I need a lot of time to process something before I can forgive. But I guess the difference now is I'm going to forgive, and I think, I know I'm going to forgive them, but I want to sort of work through a few things first. So that's my first example. So the wrong view I had was very much, you shouldn't forgive because that justifies the unskillful act, and it's just not true. So that's the first example. That was relatively straightforward. I think the tricky thing is most of the time wrong views are kind of sticky, almost like balls of web of all sorts of interconnected wrong views that are all together and really hard to untangle. So my next example is a bit more to it, and I'm going to try and unravel a little story with you now. So I remember on my very first retreat, which was at the start of 2015, it was called the 7 Points of Mind Training at Taraloka. And we were led on that retreat by Sad Nandi, who was amazing, and that was an amazing, amazing life-changing retreat. And she gave a lot of amazing talks, but one day she was talking about a list. The list was signs you're reducing your ego clinging. Very good. And I'm a list fan, so very good. Sorry. And there were various things. One of the things on this list, so a sign that you could identify that meant you were reducing your ego clinging. An example, being able to have a more panoramic awareness of a situation. Yeah, that makes sense. So if you notice that you're going that way more and more, you can see you changing. But the one on this list that really stood out to me was this. One's well-being is less dependent on being alone or being with others. So one's well-being is less dependent on being alone or being with others. So this really stuck out to me. It really struck me at the time. I remember doing a big star next to it. Because I'm a great big extrovert, and especially in the past I really got my energy from being with people, and I really struggled with time on my own. Like any extended time by myself, I'd really have a hard time. And I say that, even a day off by myself, I'd have a hard time actually. So it was quite limiting actually. And I realised, if I could change to the extent where my well-being wasn't so dependent on this, that would be so helpful. I could really see that. And I could imagine if you were, naturally a lot more introvert, the opposite could be true. So I could imagine days and days and days in a row with constant people and meetings could be a bit of a nightmare too. So it could work either way. So this really spoke to me. So, I guess I made a bit of a commitment at that point. So, okay, this is something I want to do, and how can I do this? So how can I strive towards that so that my well-being is less dependent on being with other people? Now, I've lived alone for the past 4 years, and to begin with, I wasn't particularly through a choice I'd made, it was just how circumstances unfolded. But actually, hearing that was really helpful, because I thought, so this is actually really helpful grounds for me to live by myself, because I think this is an opportunity to change. And it doesn't mean I still didn't try and change situations, to begin with, but I thought, actually, I need to keep with this, I need to keep living by myself, because this will make a difference. And I thought, I need to understand myself better. So why is it that I crave to be around other people? What's underneath that? And I realised that I think it's something about, it brings out a much better side of me, so I can be much more generous to some. So for example, if you're living with someone, you can cook them really nice meals, or you can give them little treats or surprises, or you can just be, delightful towards them. So it brought out a better side of me. So I was like, okay, that is why I enjoy it. But then I just felt a bit stuck, and I was like, what do I do now? Because I'm on my own, So it took years to change this, and lots of things just subtly helped. And around this time, I was in a space where I was really comfortable meditating with others, but I found it really challenging to meditate by myself, particularly by myself in my house. And it's funny, because I've committed to wanting to change my mind, to understand myself better and change how I think. And meditation is a good tool for that, yet I was really reluctant to meditate by myself, so it was tricky stuff. And one day, just this really clear analogy came to me that really helped explain it to me. It's to do with horror films, so go with me on this. And it's kind of like, if you've ever watched a sort of classic jumpy horror film, the worst bit is the tension, the mounting tension before you actually see the monster or the bad guy or whatever it is. So it's, those really slow moments where nothing's actually really happening, but it is awful, and it just gets worse and worse the longer it is. But usually when you see the monster, it's actually quite a letdown. It's not that big a deal. This is what I find. So for me, when I found these feelings of discomfort, and really the thing to do would be to turn towards that and sit and meditate, I'd just be like, no, it just felt really uncomfortable, and I'd just push it away and distract myself and do something else. But then the next day, those feelings would just be creeping up and up and up, and it would just day by day mount and mount and mount and get worse and worse. And then I eventually would get to a breaking point and would have to sit with it, and I'd cry and have to, sort it out. But it wouldn't be that bad in the end. And what I've really learned from that is actually just turn towards those uncomfortable feelings right away, nip them in the bud. It's so worth doing. So that was a really helpful realisation for me. And that broke through something that meant I could meditate by myself, because it was never as scary as I thought it was going to turn out to be. So that was really helpful for me. And this was the start of 2015, so it took a couple of years. And it was, so through meditation, through puja, because ritual really means a lot to me. And sometimes for me personally, it's easier to wake up and do a threefold puja than it is to wake up and meditate, actually. And sometimes that's the right thing for me to do. And particularly through friendships, so through meeting up with good friends, just little things started to shift. And then I got to this breaking point last year when I was on a retreat. And I just had this huge mindset shift. And I just was sitting in meditation and I just thought, I don't live by myself, I live with myself. Do you know what I mean? I'm not living alone at all, I'm living with me. And all these things I want to do. So cooking nice meals for someone, and giving nice gifts to someone, and cleaning the house to make it look nice for someone. Well, I can do all that for me because I'm just as worthwhile. And that was a huge turnaround. And I remember getting back home from that retreat, and it was great, and I was so happy, genuinely happy for the first time in years to actually live by myself, that no longer was pushing against it. And it was just such a turnaround, so that was amazing. So it wasn't easy, it took a while, it took time and effort, but it made a huge difference to how I am now. And I remember at the end of that retreat taking on a daily practice of generosity towards myself. So for example, one night I might just spend an extra 20 minutes, say, just cleaning the bathroom and making it aesthetically beautiful. And then the next day I walk in and think, thanks, Past Pretti. Look at this beautiful bathroom, So it's things like that. So I just try and do things for myself now, if that makes sense. So I found that really life-changing. And this isn't to say that I don't still get prickles of loneliness, but I think I can really see these as separate things now. Solitude and loneliness are really different things. I visited my family in Canada last year. My cousin lent me this amazing poetry book by Rupi Kaur, so I'd really recommend her poetry. And the poem I opened up to, really short and simple, is this. Loneliness is a sign you are in desperate need of yourself. So I'm going to read that again. Loneliness is a sign you are in desperate need of yourself. And that just really struck me, and I've really found that to be true. So when I get these prickles of loneliness, it's actually, I might have fallen out of the better habits I've established for myself, and actually it's again, do something for myself and connect with myself again. Solitude's got a very different flavour to me, actually, and you can still be really connected to your loved ones on your own, and that's been important for me to realise as well. I remember reading that Bhante Sangharakshita, really early on in the days of the order, he went on a long solitary retreat. And even though he hadn't had any actual contact with any of his friends or his order member friends, he could still properly imagine them in a circle around him, even imagine where they'd be sitting with him, because he had such vivid, true contact with these people in his life that even away from them, those relationships were properly maintained. And I really like that. So, the people who are closest to you, the most important to you, your spiritual friendships and your relationships, you always have them with you, and that's, I think, really comforting and really true. So I think that's really lovely. So I seem to be doing well with time. This is very good. So that's like I say, a bit more of a complicated tangle of things, but hopefully that was helpful to go through. I'm going to move on a bit, so whilst I'm talking about lifestyle, I'm going to talk a little bit about work, just as my last example. So I work as an optometrist, and I really, really love my job, so that's lovely. And I have a role I'm really lucky to have, which is a teaching role as well. So I work in practice, but I also sometimes travel to do some teaching at a specific place. And something I really noticed has completely changed is that early on in my life, so before I'd met the Dharma and become practicing as a Buddhist, when I'd go on those courses and help run these courses, I loved it, but there was a real moment where I had real discomfort, and it was at the beginning where you had to introduce yourself in terms of a career bio. So you were introducing yourself to those you were teaching, very much based around, I guess, your accomplishments in that career sense. And I'd always feel really nervous doing it, and really would just be comparing myself constantly to my other colleagues who I loved, who I thought so much of. And I'd feel really uncomfortable, so I'd very much feel like, I'd feel a lot of lack. I think, I should be doing that, I'm not good enough, this kind of thing. And that happened as a pattern every time I did these courses, And then I noticed, I was just thinking about this recently, how much that's completely shifted. So now, I just feel really self-confident and happy, because I've realised actually, the things that I'm comparing, I'm really happy for my colleagues. They've done those accomplishments because it's what they wanted to do and what they were passionate about. And I can have mudita for that. But actually, they're not the avenues I wanted to go down. I'm doing what I love, actually, and that is enough. So I think there's something about exemplifying, I'm actually really content with what I'm doing. You don't have to keep chasing something, unless it's what you want, of course. But I think beforehand I had a bit of a view that, well, I'm not enough, I need to do more to be impressive or something. But actually, I bring what I bring. I bring passion and enthusiasm, and I bring what I bring, and that's enough. So that was really helpful. And I suppose the whole thing there was very much the worldly wins. I wanted more praise, and I wanted a bit of fame, I suppose, a bit of status. There's something about that was going on. And now the blow of those wins isn't quite the same with how I interact with them. And like I say, now I can just feel really proud and happy with my colleagues without any kind of comparison, and just very much stand on my own, I suppose, in a positive way. So the wrong view here was very much, somehow being a really good optometrist who loves, what I do wasn't enough, and it is actually, and I just think that's important. If there's something that you're really passionate and interested in, pursue it, chase it. That's what you want. But I think it's a funny thing with jealousy. I think you can be jealous in the way of where you might see something that you want, and then it might spur you on to do it actually. But I know, certainly with myself, I can be jealous of things I'm not even interested in. But for some reason, I'm just jealous. It's just a weird negative emotion. Like, why am I even jealous of that? And I think and I'm really working with trying to transform that into mudita. I'd be happy for the person who has that rather than being jealous of it. That's what I'm really trying to turn around there. So hopefully it was helpful to go through a few examples of some different areas of wrong views that I really tried to help turn around, make more into right views. So I'd really recommend looking your experience. It might be through work or relationships or your living situation or something completely different. But maybe look for an area where there's definite dukkha or regular dukkha, and maybe try and look underneath it. But I'd really say do it with the help of friendship, do it with the help of your spiritual friends. And maybe see if there's a wrong view right in the heart of it, and that's the issue, and that's what you want to work at transforming. So thank you.
I'd like to thank the Centre team for asking me to do this, because I'm normally in the cupboard out there at the back, and I've been wheeled out tonight especially. I suppose in a way I've always seen myself as not the best material to become a Buddhist. I was brought up a Christian, and I did it to death until I was 14. And then I thought, that's it with religion. I've had enough with religion. And then I became a hippie. And, that was a lot of fun, actually. I just, in a way, I just thought, well, hedonism's, that's the way forward. As much pleasure and enjoyment as you can get out of life, and that's what life's all about. And I'd see my friends get involved there were various cults appeared. Every 5 minutes there was some chap from India coming over saying, this, and I'd see my friends get really excited. And then a few months later, they'd walk back and say, well, it's, they're after me money or something or whatever. So very disappointed. So I steered clear of anything like that. So how did I get here? I mean, that's the thing. How did I get here? It's been quite a process, really, because I was brought up to in a way to be quite an arrogant person, and I've got this phrase that keeps coming up all the time. I mean, not all the time. I mean, it's not happened yet today anyway. But I'm surrounded by idiots. In a way, that's my fallback position. And I used to believe it, But anyway, we're all idiots, aren't we? We're all idiots. But I used to really believe it. And what I've done since then, I've been able to transform it. When I get the thought, I'm surrounded by idiots. He says, look around. The way I take it then is the fact, well, what's going on here? I'm feeling insecure and out of my depth. And this is the safety mechanism that I produce in my mind to cope with that situation. So what I do is I say, well, Amoghavamsa, you feel a bit out of your depth now. You feel a bit wibbly and a bit panicky. So just be panicky and wibbly, and it's all right. It's not. So the thing is to use all the stuff that you get, and you can change it. You can change it. It's still there, but you don't have to sort of go with it. You don't have to go with it. So. Yes, I'll just have a quick look at that. Okay, so I'm talking about the heart. So this is one of my most favourite pictures. I think you can see it. It's a heart shaped like a lock, and it's called Freeing the Heart, and it's the heart's being open. Well, that's what my spiritual life's been all about. It's about. I'm going to move around a bit over here. It's about freeing the heart. It's about transforming the heart, transforming the emotions. Because we've got it up here. We know everything. We know the 5 this and the 8 of that and the 12 of the other and all that. But actually, actually putting them into being behind them, really behind them and doing it, that's the difficult process. Okay, so have we got a clock anywhere? Clock. Oh, never mind. Don't worry. It's over there. So by some fluke, I was taught to meditate by a friend at university. I mean, it was a bit of an accident, really, how it happened. And I always say that I would never have walked into a Buddhist centre in a million years, because Buddhist centres are full of losers, basically. Because they can't get a life, so this is what they do, they get some emotional prop, to sort out their lives. This is what I thought, In fact, I had transformed. So you're all winners. So anyway, this guy, he told me to meditate. And then he kept sending me Sangharakshita's tapes in the post. I was in Nottingham at the time. And I sort of called myself the lone Buddhist, because there was only another little Zen group that I went to, but I thought they were really, they just turned to face the wall and ignored me. And I thought that was really rude. But anyway, that's beside the point. What I did was I decided that for a month I was going to meditate every day apart from Sundays, because I couldn't do Sundays because of my church upbringing. Sundays had to be definitely loads of fun. I had to really take on Sundays and enjoy them. So I'd meditate 6 days a week, and all I could do was 5 minutes. That's all I could do, 5 minutes. It's nice, but it was enough. I had to stop after 5 minutes, that was enough. And after a month, I asked a friend, it's always good that, if you want to know how well you're progressing, ask a friend, because it's difficult to know yourself, you know. And she said, oh yes, you changed a lot. I'm not frightened of you anymore. So, I mean, that was a real wake-up. I mean, that was a real gift. The fact that she was, I thought I was, you know, interesting and whatever, full of life, but obviously I was frightening her. And of course, we don't want to go around terrifying people. We don't want to do that. You know, we want to be nice people. I mean, that's the plan. So that was the sort of first wake-up call. You know, I got some information about myself, how people saw me, whereas before I'd never got that. So I thought, well, this stuff really does work. This does, even if it's just 25 minutes a week. Oh no, hang on, 30 minutes a week. 30 minutes a week. Even if it's 30 minutes a week, it does make a difference, a real difference. So I basically stuck with it, and I did my best with the precepts. I mean, there was only 5 then, so it's a lot easier. You know, I've got 10 now, so you know, you have to up your ante a bit. I tried to be generous, and then eventually I moved to Norwich, and that was the first time I'd actually been around a Buddhist centre, and they kept banging on about generosity and dharma. And I thought, well, of course they are. I mean, they want me money, don't they? So, I mean, you can see where I've come from. Eventually, now, is that the right? I've just got to check. What's doing. Yes. Oh, yeah, okay. So, I went on retreat, and I was very brave. I went on a meditation retreat at Majaloka. And there was quite a lot of silence, but there was what I used to call Blue Peter Buddhism. Do you all know what Blue Peter is? It's a children's program where you get out crayons and toilet roll holders and make things. So, you know, for me, a retreat's about, you know, sitting on a cushion, meditating, but no, we had to start drawing stuff. Yeah, making it, no, that sort of thing. So, what did we do? Oh yeah, he said, I want you to draw the cave of your heart. Okay, so, you know, paper, you know, draw the cave of your heart. And, you know, I didn't think any more about it. But then I went back home to Sheffield. Yeah, Sheffield now, that's right. And I had a dream. And the dream was about finding the cave of my heart. And it was above Agdon Reservoir. There's some cliffs there called Agdon Washes. And there was this cave there. And we were queuing up to go into this cave. It was a show cave, you know. And we got in there, and I sort of looked around. You know, I'm thinking, well, you know, caves, show caves were such stalactites and stalagmites and jewels and gems and all that sort of interesting geology and all that, but it was just this square room. Incredibly boring. And on the floor there were sort of brown stains and bits of rusty iron. And then up to the ceiling, and just a foot below the ceiling, there was this brown stain all the way around. So I talked to the guy and said, what's this brown stain all the way around the cave of my heart? And he said, well, when we first found it, it was full up to there of shit. And we've been spending a lot of time cleaning it out and getting it ready. And the guy said, it's almost ready. So in a way, basically, what I've been doing for years is, I've been following the precepts, and I've been meditating a lot more than 5 minutes now, I was coming on, and doing all the things you're supposed to do, being generous, and every time I did something like that, I'm basically shoveling out more shit. So, in a way, that's what my spiritual life's been, really. Is sort of preparing the heart ready for I don't know what, but ready. So I'll finish with another little story, which is we have these men's weekends, and we had a men's weekend in Manchester, and I got there, and there was sort of 2.5 people there basically. And the organiser was not very good at it, to be honest, so we sacked him. And we decided to have a men's day, because there's only a few of us, so I had Sunday free. And I was this person with this sort of black cloud over my head, you see in cartoons. I was in a really terrible mood, because those events have been very supportive for me. And suddenly, what's been very supportive is starting to trickle into the sort of sand, as it were. So I was not in a very good state. And I'd got Sunday free in this really crap state, basically. And I thought, what on earth am I going to do? Because I wanted to go out and get some fresh air. And I thought, if I go to the Peak District, it's going to be just full of happy people, frankly. Which I couldn't handle, I just couldn't handle them. So I thought, I know what I'll do, I'll go for a walk along the 5 Weirs Walk. The 5 Weirs Walk? And I figured that there won't be many happy people down there, and I can be miserable on my own, it's all right, This is quite a long time ago. So I set off, and I get to the start of the 5 Weirs Walk, and I'm walking away feeling really miserable. And suddenly there's a group of women walk past me the other way, and they're all in pink, and they're all dressed up in pink, and I think, that's a bit different. And then I walk a bit further on, there's another group of women walk past me, all dressed in pink. And then when you have to cross roads quite a bit, and there's stewards, and I said, and they were really happy. They were really happy. It was quite a contrast. And I asked the steward, what's going on? And he said, well, it's a sponsored walk for breast cancer. And I can't remember the figure, but he said there's hundreds of mostly women who have started at Meadowhall and walking into Sheffield. So the place I'd chosen to walk, I was walking against this stream with all these happy women, all dressed in with pink rabbit's ears and pink bras on and pink all sorts of stuff on. And I'm really miserable. So I stopped and I thought, what am I going to do here? This is really dangerous. I don't want to walk back into Sheffield and in a way admit defeat or something. I mean, the blokes, they can't organise a weekend, whereas women, they can get things on, they can make things happen. I'm thinking, this isn't good, this isn't good. So I decide, something breaks in me, in a way, something, I don't know what it is. In a way, I think the lock of my heart just suddenly opens, the black clouds disperse, and then suddenly, where I'm standing, this kingfisher just comes out from the bank and sort of rockets down the stream the way I'm going to walk. And I just think, that's a sign. It's a sign. And apparently the Greeks call kingfishers halcyons. And you might have come across the halcyon days, which is when it's a beautiful period of time when it's the halcyon days. And what halcyons are supposed to do, according to the Greeks, is that they nest in the ocean. They make a nest in the ocean and they hatch the birds and fly away. So in a way what they do is they make a calm place where life comes into being in chaos. And that's just what I did, in a way. I was in this amazing mess of chaos, and then I made something, new life out of it. So I just thought, right, I walked to Meadow Hall against the stream, and there were just crowds and crowds of women. I'm going, hi, great, marvellous, I was just so happy. It was actually a real turnaround. And I actually bumped into some distant cousin, and we had a good chat about things, whatever. So I suppose what that says is that you've got to notice what's going on, and then you've got to make a choice. Are you going to carry on with what's going on? And I hadn't even noticed that I've got this black cloud until I was confronted by these other people in a really positive state, basically. I would have just walked all the way to Meadow Hall in a right mess, in a state, and then, come back in a little state and grumbled about, we can't even organise an order weekend, that sort of stuff. And so that's so important to notice the state you're in and choose what you want to do with it. Choose.
Thank you very much, Pretti and Amoghavamsa. So I'm going to be talking about transforming my energy and my volition, my guts. And there's a particular term that we've been using over the past few weeks, virya, the term virya, which is a Buddhist term, which means energy directed towards what is good. And in Buddhism, for Buddhists, what is most noble, what is good, is enlightenment or awakening. So virya is energy directed either towards the individual awakening, our own individual pursuit of awakening, or the creation of collective conditions with other people, a community of people for awakening, other people to awaken. So that's virya, that's what we're looking to cultivate is virya, energy directed towards what's best, what is most highest, what is most noble. So we've all got loads of energy, we've got tons and tons of energy, but it isn't always directed to the goal, to what's noble or what's good or what's highest. When I first arrived at the Buddhist Centre, a lot of my energy was blocked, it just wasn't available to me. And I repressed it maybe because it wasn't socially acceptable, I thought it wasn't acceptable. Some of my energy was just dissipated into kind of lots of different kind of trivial tasks, so it got diffused because I didn't really have a clear purpose in life. I didn't really have a focus or kind of a project or a purpose to live by, so my energy just kind of got scattered and diffused. And some of my energy was and still is actually too coarse to be directed towards what is good, what is best, and it got expressed in just habitually unskillful ways. I couldn't really direct it towards what I wanted, towards what is best. So for the past 14 years I've had to work in lots of different ways with my energy to transform it and to try and direct as much of it as possible, more and more of it towards what I think is best and most noble, to cultivate more and more virya. So the first, I'm going to talk about three ways I've worked with my energy. And the first is to become more passionate and alive. So I'm going to talk about my own experience, but I think generally this is something to think about for yourself, how to become more passionate and more alive. What brings that out for you? What makes you more alive, more passionate? For me it's football. Unfortunately, it's football. It seems to be football. And football's been a big part of my life since I was about 8 years old. I've played a lot of football for different teams. watched a lot of football, talked about football a lot, and so it's just played a big part of my life, particularly with my dad and my brother. That's the main way I had of relating with my dad and my brother was football, so it's a huge part of my life. But after a few years of meditating and going on retreats and hearing about Buddhist ideas like renunciation, I decided that, well, football's not very spiritual really, is it? It's just kind of a load of men or women kicking, a bit of leather around. I should basically forget about football because it's not very spiritual. So I just took less interest in it and kind of tried to just pour more and more of myself into what I thought was, what was noble and spiritual, just to kind of leave football behind. I was ordained by Amoghavamsa. Amoghavamsa was my preceptor, and we would meet, and we still try and meet as regularly as we can. We try and meet every week, but it's often kind of largely because of me, not every week. But we're going to meet tomorrow. And one of our meetings, Amoghavamsa just suggested to me, well, why don't you give yourself a treat? Why don't you go and watch a football match with your dad? I've kind of been working hard on that. I could have a treat. Let's go and watch a football match with my dad. And then that opened up, and it was a really good season. It was when Liverpool nearly won the league, and we had a really good season. I ended up going to quite a few matches. I went to maybe half a dozen matches, a lot of it with my dad, sometimes with my brother. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed going to the matches again. I really enjoyed watching the games, seeing Liverpool, my team doing well. So there was some side effects I hadn't noticed, I hadn't really expected, but one of them was I found a way to connect with my dad again, because I'd kind of lost connection with my dad and didn't have a great relationship with him. But this is how I connect with my dad, isn't it? Football. So by going to football, I started to have a way back into connecting with my dad and my brother. There's other side effects. I could talk a lot about football. And I just got to really like the chanting, and being collectively with people and chanting was a big part of the enjoyment of it for me. But I discovered something else connected to energy, which was that people started to comment that, I seem to have more energy, I seem to be more kind of present, more alive, there seem to be more of me present in other areas of my life, what my colleagues were noticing at the centre. And what I'd done is just rediscovered something that I was passionate about, that made me alive, that I'd abandoned really, mistakenly. And I'd got very kind of worthy and pious, but not very happy. And I was doing things that I thought I should be doing. And everything got a bit just kind of strained and a bit forced. And I just needed to loosen my grip, I suppose, on myself and my practice, and just trust the momentum of my practice and the conditions, and just allow myself to have a bit of fun, actually. So when I meet Amoghavamsa, I observe how he speaks to me, because he's very good at opening people up. And one of the things he does, he asks me about football. He asks, how are Liverpool doing? And then what I do is I come alive. Suddenly all this energy comes in. I start to tell him how Liverpool are doing. We're coming fourth in the league, we had a great result, and there's a really good season. And suddenly I've come alive, and all this energy is there. So I think it's really important to ask yourself, or discover, if you don't know already, what is it that makes you alive? What is it that brings that energy into your life? And then use that in a way, use that to be full of energy, and then you can work with that energy, you can have it in other areas of your life, and you can direct it. So for me, it's football, but it's, unfortunately, there's nothing glamorous or spiritual. And then the second area I wanted to talk about is that the more alive and passionate me needs training and directing. It needs redirecting and training. So all that energy and that passion, that aliveness, that energy, when you discover it, needs to be redirected and retrained, which is which basically Amoghavamsa's cave of the heart metaphor is a brilliant metaphor for, actually, that the practice of ethics and meditation is retraining our emotions, cleaning our emotions, purifying our heart, purifying our emotions. So that's what I've been doing, is a lot of really trying to commit to the practice of ethics, so that my energy gets directed in a skillful way, in a creative way, towards awakening, towards what is good. And a lot of it is like Amoghavamsa said, it's just noticing and choosing, making a choice. Well, is my energy going in the way I want it to go in? Can I be more creative in this situation? The other thing I've noticed in relation to ethics and energy is that negative mental states and negative actions really drain my energy. If I do something unskillful, or I allow a negative train of thought to run, my mind gets kind of foggy and cloudy, and my energy just kind of drops. My energy is kind of lost. It's like a leaky container. All the energy just kind of is drained if I allow negative states or do something unskillful. And then, metta bhavana. Through meditation and metta bhavana in particular, what I've been doing over the last 14 years is cultivating a deeper longing. It's a different, you could say, a different channel for my emotions to flow in, for this energy to flow in, but trying to carve out a deep longing for the well-being of other people. A non-selfish but more skillful volition, an energy in the direction of what is highest, what is best. So the metta bhavana, we'll be doing it this evening, is a really potent, really powerful practice. And it doesn't just happen in one sit or overnight, but over years and years and years, there's a real momentum that builds up, and a volition, in the direction of what is best, what is noble. So when you discover what makes you alive and gets your energy going, you need to train that energy with ethics, and in meditation, direct it towards what is most noble, what is highest. And then the third thing I want to talk about is about having something to serve, having a purpose in life. What I've discovered is all the different parts of me. If you think of that, there are loads of different volitions within you, loads of different drives, parts of you that want different things in a way, and the energy gets, in a sense, that energy competes with itself, it conflicts with itself, it kind of gets locked up, just competing over different things. It's almost like you've got I heard there's a great teacher called Vasantra, and he used the analogy that there's 100 different Vasantras. So if there's like 100 different Bodhinagas all competing over different things to do with my time, different energies in different directions. And what I needed was just something big enough to serve, noble enough to serve, that enough of them would get interested in it, or enough of them would get behind that and want to serve it. So what happens is, if you've got a purpose, something to live by, it gives a focus for your energy, and your energy can become harnessed and directed behind that purpose, behind that focus. It's amazing what human beings can do with a real purpose, a real purpose that's bigger than themselves, actually not a selfish purpose, but something bigger than them they can serve. It's amazing what human beings are capable of. Having a purpose in life can focus you, it can fire your energy up. So in a kind of the first example in this area I thought of was just my family having two children quite recently. I've discovered I'm capable of a lot more than I thought I was, actually, just having that commitment to their care and their well-being. That, I'm capable of having virtually no sleep and functioning, whereas I used to be kind of really, really precious about my sleep. I'd have to have 10 hours, 12 hours sleep. At university, I'd sleep all day sometimes, and then get up in the evening to go out. This was a long time ago, but I used to be famous for sleeping. I discovered, actually, I can function without having slept. I can do that continuously for months. Actually, there was like a period of like 9 months when my son didn't sleep for more than an hour sometimes, and it seemed horrendous. But then I actually discovered I'm capable of doing that. I've got these resources. If I care enough about my work and life here at the centre and my children, I can just do it. I'm capable of doing it, and I wouldn't really have discovered that without having been committed to that, something bigger than me, something that isn't just about me. So humans are capable of having much more energy when we really need it, when there's something we really care about. But for me, what I want to talk about is virya, this energy, particular type of energy directed towards awakening, towards what is noble and awakening. So for me, the purpose that really focused, that was my ordination. And again, that features Amoghavamsa ordained me 7 years ago. And my ordination was a real focus. That's, in a sense, it's a purpose that really directs my energy. It's a purpose that's big enough that I really, really want to serve it. I really want to get all of my energy behind it. I really care about it. I really care about our order and about our community. I care about this sangha, and I want to put my energy behind it. So just to give you an example about transforming volition, tomorrow is the quarter-final of the Champions League. Liverpool are playing against Man City, and my brother offered me a ticket to go to it. And I said, no, I'm not going to go because I'm going to go to teach the intermediate class, because the people there, I didn't say all of this to my brother, but I just said I got to work, because that was easier. But my thinking was, well, what I reflected was, okay, well, I really enjoy the match and I get a lot of energy out of it and I'd really enjoy that, but then in a few weeks it wouldn't really matter that much. But actually the people coming along on a Wednesday night, if I come and I support them and teach them the Dharma, well then, who knows who they'll become. Some of the people in that class might become order members, they might become really good friends of mine, they might really inspire me, they'll inspire other people. Who knows what will come out of that. It's just obviously much better use of my time actually. So it's quite a simple decision actually. So it's football's really important to me, but the Dharma is much more important. Okay. So finally, to do with ordination, one of the things I've committed to also is something that's not easy to talk about, but I've got a relationship to Amitabha, who's the Buddha that I visualise and that I received that practice of ordination from Amoghavamsa. And with my visualisation of Amitabha and devotion, the practice of devotion to Amitabha, it's as though what I'm doing is plugging into somebody else's energy, or the energy of the enlightened mind. It's not even someone else, it's just the energy of the enlightened mind. And maybe emptying out the cave of the heart, as Amoghavamsa described. Well, if you purify it and empty it, well, the energy, something else can enter into that, the energy of the enlightened mind, the emotion of the enlightened mind. Something that isn't personal, something that's bigger than personal. So that's for me, the reason we practice ethics is that we can prepare the mind for something outside of us and that we can cooperate with. So it's as though we're kind of putting up a sail that can catch a wind that will blow us in our Dharma life. So that needs to be cultivated as well, devotion and my sadhana practice, the visualization of Amitabha. It's as though I'm plugging into something bigger than me with unlimited energy. And for a bit of time, and during that practice, sometimes that really comes alive and I really have a sense of an energy and a volition which is much bigger than my own. And then there can be a residue of that I'm left with afterwards, and an inspiration. So just to kind of end with some practical points to summarise what I've been talking about. Basically, revisit hobbies and passions. What is it that brings you alive? Where is your energy? What is it that brings your energy alive? And then the practice of ethics and metta-bhavana, really commit to those, because that reins in the energy and directs it, it trains it and focuses it in a non-selfish direction. And then engage with puja, engage with the imagination and emotion. So in next week's puja, try and engage emotionally with each stage of the puja, use your imagination to bring the puja alive. And go on retreats. I find that in retreat centres, particularly Padmaloka is a retreat centre I go to a lot, but it's like entering into a context where I will get inspired, where the Shraddha that Vajratara talked about will be activated, and my longing for the enlightened state will be activated, will be stirred up. So, I'm just going to read another poem by Sangharakshita about the figure of Padmasambhava, who's also, we've been looking at Vajrapani. And Padmasambhava is another archetypal figure you might have heard about, who's associated with the transformation of energy. Riding a tiger, the Guru came. Smile fierce and friendly, eyes aflame. Riding a tiger from coast to coast, with his Vajra he scattered the demon host. Guru, great Guru, dispel my sin, hurl back the demon hordes within. Transform them to powers to protect the right. Thou the thousand armed, thou the infinite light.